morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone online. Thank you for being here. I know it's a pretty white winter world outside right now, but happy spring. What can I say? Okay, you guys, just a few announcements. As you all know, the Easter event has been pushed to Monday from 4:30 to 6:30. We'll follow up with some more details, but setup time is set for 2 or 2:30, as long as you can be there before 2:30 to set up all your booths and help out.
April 10th.
April 10th on Monday. And then you guys don't forget, Summit is on April 11th, so put that in your guys' calendar. Base camp this week is going to be a 2-hour CE class with Carly Walton. Okay, procuring cause and mastering the REPC. And so don't miss that. Put that in your calendar. It's 2-hour CE credits from 11 to 1 p.m. I think that's about it on announcements. Okay, George, you're up.
Yeah, here we go. All right. Well, hey, welcome everybody who's online. And then I've got some great managers in here. Already have people calling in saying they're not driving anywhere because of snow. But good to be with you guys. Hey, so let's just talk just a little bit about just the model of business that I'm seeing out there. A lot of times people will say, hey, I'm primarily focused on listings. I'm primarily focused on buyers. If I was to go back in my history in this business, and this really applies to all of us. I remember back in 2005 and most of my career, my entire focus was always on listings and always trying to take listings. And then when 07 and 8 and 9 occurred, I started to realize just the dynamics of the market. And I was so fixated on listings. I never took a step back and asked myself, okay, what type of market are we really in? And it's always a good reminder that if there's a give or take about a 3-month or more, let's just put a plus sign next to that, of inventory, it typically means that we're in much more of a buyer's market. And one of the things if I could go back in time, and I would say this to, and I've known a number of you a long time online and in the room, I would say, boy, I wish I would have paid more attention to what type of market we were in. Is it not working?
No, it's working. I just wanted it focused.
Oh, is it blurry?
Just a tad.
All right. But just what type of market are we in? Well, when you start looking at the type of market that we're in, oftentimes if I do the darker colors, it'll show up better too. When we look at the type of market that we're in, we're really moving into much more of a buyer's market. And why I think that's important to recognize is that you should really have a balance. And the balance I've always wanted in my own business has been somewhere in the neighborhood of at least a 65% for listings and a 35% for the buyer side. And when I was working from that standpoint, my business was really, really solid. And the challenge is that sometimes we get fixated on only one type of business. And the challenge is that then when the markets begin to shift, we get really, really stuck. As a good example, we're operating this year at a place where when you listed a home, you had nearly, this is crazy, nearly a 30 to 40% chance of selling it and double siding it. Remember that if you had a listing, we were somewhere in the neighborhood of being able to double side it 30 to 40% of the time. Today, that number is less than 5%. That if you have the listing that you'll double side it. So the thing that I've recognized, right, is that you sit there and go, okay, well, it's much more of a buyer's market than it is just a listing market. But at the same time, people have to buy homes. So it's not that you don't list homes. So I've always believed that somewhere in the neighborhood of 65-35 should be the ratio in which you're working off of. And yet, when I go back to 2007, 2008, 9, I really wish that I would have put more emphasis on the buying side because there were so many deals to be had. And yet the challenge is that I always was pounding listings, which is not a bad thing to spend time every day taking a listing, but also you should have a solid balance in regards to taking or working with buyers from the buying side. So it's just a good reminder to ask yourself, what is the balancing act of my business? Is it more a buying side? Is it more a listing side? Am I so fixated on one source of business that I forget other types of business? And I it wasn't too long ago that we talked about this, and it's, here we are on Monday, and of course we're gonna address and we're gonna work from a place of mindset. But part of that mindset is knowing where to put your focus. And the challenge is for every one of us is that we have two types of business right now. We have what's called immediate business, and we have future business. And I've talked about this, and I probably in the last couple of months, I've even talked about it. But I just want to point out that sometimes we forget that the sources of business that we should be going after. And I just want to point out just a couple of things. If I'm looking at immediate business, I'm looking at things like sign calls. I'm looking at things like buyer leads. Let's just put the internet. I'm looking at for sale by owners. I'm looking at new for sale by owners, new expireds. And you start realizing that these are all people who, and another form that I might bring up there is relocation. But if you start looking at those are immediate sources of business. It's like they're waving a flag out there saying, hey, I want to either buy a home or I want to sell a home. If I'm a sign call, if I'm a buyer lead or an internet lead, or my for sale owner, an expired, a relocation. And the other one I would put up here, and I often put up here is referral business from your SOI, which oftentimes can be immediate, especially knowing that for every single person in your SOI, they know at least 7 people a year that are going to either buy a home or sell a home. So you start recognizing, going, wait a second here, do I have enough immediate business? And the reality is that this immediate business requires and creates a tremendous amount of rejection. And it's a lot of rejection. Whereas where you look at future business, you can look at things like just listed. You can look at just sold, whether by phone or whether in person. You can look at old expireds. You can look at old for sale by owners. You can look at professionals. And what I mean by professionals, CPAs, attorneys, and those attorneys would be estate, divorce, and BK, bankruptcy attorneys. And you start recognizing there's a lot to be had there. Then, of course, you probably should have started. I'm going to put it actually at the top of the list, but is your SOI and your past clients. And you start recognizing, well, there's your future business. And the challenge is that on this side of the equation, on future business, is a general statement. There's just not a lot of rejection. Not a lot of people are going to, kick you to the curb, not in a big way and a mean way. Whereas oftentimes these are so happening so fast, so quick, and happening right now. They're waving the flag of, hey, I want to buy or I want to sell. There's a high level of rejection. But the thing I've realized is that the more rejection that you're willing to take on, the higher your income will be. And so the challenge is that can you experience a tremendous amount of rejection? If you can, your income will be much higher. It's the same thing of, can you, I've even said this, the more embarrassed you're willing to be, the more income you'll earn. The more embarrassed you will allow yourself to be, the more mistakes, the more mistakes you'll make, the more you screw up, the more bad prospecting, poor scripting, making mistakes. And I finally got to the pact of where I really had to say to myself, I just cannot care. Not a screw you, I don't care about you. I just cannot allow myself to, if I want to earn a lot of money, I cannot allow others' opinions to be the dictation as to whether or not I do my job. And the challenge is that most of us are operating from a place of how do we look? What do we look like to other people? And what is the level of rejection that we're willing to take? And the problem is when you're obsessed with how you look and you're obsessed with not being rejected, this is a really rough business to make a lot of money in. Because the problem is that our ego gets out of whack with what we look like. And I can still remember way back in my career. I mean, I'm talking nearly 30 years ago, and I was sitting there and I was prospecting, and I'm not going to even say the agent because there's still an agent in our company, but in the business. But it was a he, and he said, you know what? I really don't prospect. I just think that I wait for business to come to me. And he would be skiing and golfing every single day, and he would wait for business. Then I even saw this same individual get into management in a particular company and was fired within a year because, again, he was so obsessed with looking good, so obsessed with not being rejected. He would never prospect. He would never take action. He would never do the things that really can make you earn a lot of money. And when the markets are shifting, if you're not willing to look dumb or be embarrassed and be highly rejected, you're not going to earn a lot of money. So just remember that. Remember that, man, am I letting my life be dictated by what I look like and what people say and what their opinions are? And am I also worried about whether people like me or reject me? And when you start getting away from that, you start doing your job. You start doing the things you're supposed to do. You recruit more, you prospect more, you make more calls, you knock more doors, you make more mistakes because you don't care what people think. And there's this fine line between I don't care, screw you, versus just this solid space inside of you that says, I cannot dictate my life based on everyone else's opinions. And when I dictate my life based on everyone else's opinions, you lose yourself. And the challenge is you can't allow yourself to be lost. Because if you lose yourself, then you have no center. And then even when you do make calls or you do knock doors or you reach out to any of these sources and other beyond even what's up here, you don't have success because no one wants to follow someone who has a weak constitution when they're not sure where they stand in this world. We're not sure where they want to be in relationship to the leadership that this business requires. And when you're, just basically being blown around by the wind in whatever direction it's going and whatever the market's doing, that's what you do. And you're not willing to look stupid or be embarrassed and be rejected. Man, life never is really that good in this business. So this is my opinion. What counters the rejection, what counters the, hey, what am I looking like, comes back to the most important part, I believe, of the foundation, which is simply your desire, or you could even say your purpose. And the thing that I've realized over the years is that the reasons that you move your life, the reasons that you're willing to not look so good, the reasons that you're willing to be rejected, the reasons you're willing to ignore the opinions of others is because you have enough reasons for what you desire. And the challenge is if you walk into this business on a day in and day out business, forgetting the reasons why you want what you want, you won't do what's necessary. In fact, what you'll start doing is you'll start avoiding everything that this business requires of you. You'll avoid prospecting. You'll avoid getting up early. You'll avoid knocking doors. You'll avoid calling your sphere. You'll avoid doing videos. You'll avoid doing door knocks. You'll avoid calling for sell buyers, expires, just listed, just sold. And for certain, you'll avoid your sphere because all of it is at moments where you have to look like you need someone, that you need someone's help. Well, heaven to Betsy, you're not going to do that if your ego's out of control because all of a sudden, I'm going to do it. I don't need anybody's help. And yet you're never going to get to the top alone. You just simply won't. Even if you think you did, you didn't. Because there were people who helped you along the way. And again, keeping your ego in check, not avoiding your job, has so much to do where you're saying, you know what? I want what I want so badly that I'm willing to look stupid. I'm willing to need people, help people, need people's help, not worried about the opinions of others, totally willing to be rejected. And it's all because I want something. I desire something so badly that all of these little games I'm playing inside my head as I negotiate with myself, I'm willing to make the calls. I'm willing to knock the doors. I'm willing to do all that's necessary because I desire what I desire so deeply. Make sense? It is my opinion, very few people figure this out. And they aren't conscious in their lives. And their lives are dictated by the opinions of others, what others think of them, what they look like, what people will say, how they'll be rejected, will they, and boy, they want to talk about a motivator is this. And Brene Brown will talk about it, but it's belonging. You know, have you never noticed that people follow pathways in their life, not because of what they like or what they believe or even certain things? They do it because they want a sense of belonging, and a sense of belonging is a big deal. As we have grown up in, you know, let's just say that, you know, not this is so overused, but tribes, right? And the problem is that when you are ousted from a tribe, when you're ousted from a society, when you're ousted from friends, ousted from, you know, how often I hear where, you know, siblings don't talk to one another, parents don't talk to their children, or children don't talk to their parents, you know, or a group of friends or a particular company, and all of a sudden there's all of this sense of you didn't keep the rules, so now you don't belong. That sense of belonging. Think about these words. The sense of belonging has to do with opinions. What do I look like? Do I need people's help? Am I avoiding certain things? Will I be rejected by my tribe, by my people, by the people, by humanity? And I'm telling you, that sense of belonging is more powerful than we may even imagine. And that sense of belonging, unfortunately, has a lot of good things to it because it helps us in lots of good ways, but it also has a lot of negativity to it. And if people get more committed to belonging than they even do to what they believe, they're willing to overlook what they believe just because they have a sense of belonging. Think about that. A sense of lowering what you believe or ignoring what you believe, not paying attention to what you believe because you're more concerned about, I just simply want to belong. That is one of the most powerful things that humanity has, that drives through our souls as to our belonging. And yet we can overcome it if what we want is greater than a sense of belonging, greater than a sense of rejection, greater than in a sense of what we look like, the opinions of others, whether we're willing to lower or accept the fact, or lower our ego or accept the fact that we need people, we want their help, that we are going to avoid them. We're not going to avoid the situations because we're willing to be rejected. We're willing to look dumb, stupid, incompetent. We're willing to look at all of those things because our reasons are so strong, even beyond just the sense of belonging. Any thoughts, comments? John?
When I first walked in the room, my first thought was a huge mistake a lot of agents, including myself, make is they're so driven towards immediate that they neglect the future. And as you were talking and as I was processing, immediate has a price to pay, and you said that deals with dealing with rejection. Future has a price to pay as well, especially in this microwave happy meal world. And so on one side, you have the master example of Alma Merrill, who figured out how to deal with rejection and does a ton of business. And on the other side, you have Brenda Lee Jones, who figured out patience and delivering high value to other people, and does a tremendous book of business. And now, because of what they see they may be missing on the other side, each one of them is trying to figure out how to master the other side. Well,
Yeah, they're both important, the immediate and the future.
and so really, to get your business going from the beginning, you can decide to just master one side. Which is, am I gonna be patient and deliver a high amount of value to a book of business? I mean, that's what Linda Lee does, and she makes 600,000 a year.
Mhm.
Or you can say, well, I want to be mentored by someone like Alma Merrill and master rejection. And he makes, I don't know, but it's up there as well.
No, it's not, but that's a whole other conversation.
It wasn't.
No, it wasn't,
Okay.
never has been, but that's a whole other conversation.
Well, that's.
George,
Yes,
I was just gonna agree with you on that because there's a mastering of getting listings, which is a whole different thing than doing customer service and servicing your clients and getting them sold
right,
with
but
what we're,
yes, yeah, exactly, and John, the point is, right, is mastering the ability to be rejected by the immediate business.
Right,
Right, but yeah, now you've gone into talking incomes, and I know what the incomes are, and so that's not accurate, just so you know. And now that individual's not with us, I'm not gonna perpetuate honoring the fact that this person's earned a bunch of money when they haven't. Okay, but what they have mastered
right,
is the ability to set an appointment,
right,
right? And they've mastered the ability, and they've become extremely good
right,
at setting appointments and extremely good at the ability to be rejected and being okay with it. And there's a huge skill set there,
right,
right? The ability to overcome that is huge. And then to your point of this future business, take someone like a Brenda Lee to where she's worked her sphere at such great lengths and has so patiently done it over this last, a lot of years, but I would say her primary focus has been over this last decade or last 13 years. And to where the statement I always make is your business getting easier or harder. If it's getting easier, that means you're really doing some really solid things with your sphere.
right,
If it's still the same way as it used to be, where every day is the grind, every day you're out there trying to get the immediate business, then the challenge is that you were probably not doing to your point, the important but not urgent,
yeah,
versus we're doing the urgent and important. And that's where our focus. And so we have to repeat that. And by the way, I would say that the reason there hasn't been this elevation is because, to your point, this side of that individual we were just talking about hasn't been the primary focus.
right.
This has been the primary focus of the immediate.
Well,
And it's not a bad thing. It's just the fact that you were spot on when you're saying now each one of them wants to go and say, okay, how do I get business from either way of those?
Right.
But this one, the future, specifically the sphere,
right,
the sphere one takes time, right? It takes patience. It takes a period of time to doing that. And so the challenge is that which is great in this arena where someone might make a couple $100,000, $200,000 or $300,000, they can,
right.
but then they have to be on it and on their game every minute, every day, constantly on the grind.
Right.
And if this business doesn't get easier, it means there's a big lapse in relationship to the sphere and how one is building their past clientele, their sphere of influence, and everything else. So anyway, but the principle is true, just the examples of income or not.
Well, right, and a better example would have been the late Dave Stocco,
Yeah,
because he was hugely consistent. Yeah, anyway.
but you know what? But
Yeah.
to his example is that he had a pretty good balance of both of them.
Right,
He actually started to really improve, and some of the largest checks that he got were some of the ones that he did were from his sphere. They weren't from his, but they
there
originally,
was a time he made a shift.
right, but he still did all of the immediate,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
as time went on, he kept servicing and building his sphere
Right.
to where his business continued to get easier and easier and easier, but also he didn't lose sight of, hey, let me keep track of this immediate business.
And that's where all the greats truly are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And all of us do great. I mean, we all have great qualities, right? So it's not a dig. It's just the fact of is we want to just make sure that from a place of what we're talking about, that's accurate. And I go back to this, that I would argue that there's people who will do not work the immediate. Let's just wrap up with this. There's people who will not do the immediate business because of what they want to avoid, the opinion. They don't want to look dumb. They don't know what to say. They don't like to be rejected. They want a sense of belonging. Then there's the people who will work this and would rather be rejected by people that they don't know versus they work the people, this list of specifically the sphere side, the future side, and they don't work it for the very same reasons of rejection. What am I going to look like? What is the opinion of others? And it's crazy, but they're each wired the same way. They avoid it for the same reasons. And once I began to realize that it didn't matter what group I was calling, because it's all the same energy. It's all the same energy of rejection, all the same energy of what I'm avoiding, all the same energy of what am I looking like, all the same. And so what I've realized that for me in my lifetime, at least to this point in my life, the only way I've been able to overcome these things like the sense of belonging, rejection, income, looking, what do I need, needing people's help, the opinions, the avoiding, is the reasons that drive me. And if I get really clear on what drives me, what moves me, what makes me tick, what juices my life, then no matter where I come from, I'm going to do the things that are necessary. Now, look, later this week, we'll talk about disciplines, because, to the point of what we were just talking about, by the way, boy, if some of these individuals we've talked about had high levels of discipline, it would be where we would be in a space of being these people would be unstoppable, because some people have all of these skill sets and then lack discipline. Then there's people who have all these disciplines and lack the skill sets. And hence the reason why mindset, skills, and discipline, the trifecta of all three of them, are critically important. So with that, any other thoughts, comments?
Can I interject something? This is Brenda Lee.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate, the comments that I do so great with my SOI, and I do, but I am really a big fan, and I realize what you've always said, you need to have 3 lines, because things have changed and my SOI isn't performing like it used to, and I need to adapt and change. So that's my biggest challenge, I guess, in this last year, is to really open up and realize I can't depend on just one area. And so it's a learning curve for me, and I'm trying to not get comfortable just with my SOI. So I appreciate all of your comments, and that's where I always go back to. I can't get so comfortable with just my SOI because they're changing as well. So
They are.
I just wanted to interject that. And then I love your comment, just reflecting on what you've said today. I think I don't know if it's a fine line or a big gray area about not caring so much about everything else. We need to make sure we're not caring about the rejection and feeling fit in, but we still need to feel fit in, or we can feel very isolated. And if we get so big on our own ego that we don't give any care about what anyone else thinks, that comes across.
Yes.
And people will shun us.
Online.
Yeah. And so you have to really be cautious of where am I in that big dichotomy.
Yeah.
Just
I think I've watched my own, just my observation, my own world, Brinley, and I think there was a time in my youth where I don't care what anyone thinks, basically screw them. And now there is a place where I'm in a place in my life where, all right, I'll listen to what you have to say. Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not going to let this be the reason that it stops me from doing what I need to do, despite what your opinion may be.
perfect. Yep, that's exactly it.
And that balance, I think, has just come with life and recognizing that I don't want to be in a world of toxicity. I don't want to be in a world of craziness from that standpoint of disappointment and frustration and all the different dynamics that happen from the ego when it gets out of control. So, all right, yeah, thoughts?
I just wanted to add, just like what Stephanie Barnes was saying too, that if you this is a great reminder, because if you're going to get good at the rejection, then you know what to improve on. Therefore, your customer service will kick in even better, and therefore your future business will sustain itself.
Yeah.
So this is a great reminder, because sometimes we forget that by getting rejection, you're like, okay, that didn't work, I need to change it. And then also, you know what is working, so that's how it gets easier. So the rejection is just, hey, how am I gonna build my future? And it's a good reminder, because we forget that part. We just focus on the now business, but we don't turn it into the future business by the customer service.
Yeah.
So if you're not gonna get value along with being a rejection.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've said, like if your business isn't getting easier, something's going wrong.
Yeah.
And part of it is either you're not following up with them, but on top of it, it can be the way in which you serve the customer, help the person, move them through the process, navigated, led from that whole standpoint. So yeah, spot on. So
We should add one more to the future,
what one?
home builders.
Yeah, home builders is great. Other ones are notices of default. I mean, there's, yeah, absolutely. Home builders and notices of default, and there's probably a handful of other ones that I'm just off the top of my head, but yeah. Yeah. Especially right now, big ones right there. Just remember, most people, when the market's shifting, just like the Wayne Gretzky's, what they say, what made Wayne Gretzky great wasn't it wasn't that it wasn't where he skated where the puck was, he skated where the puck was going to be. And so we start looking at like new construction, or you start looking at the Hispanic market, right, Chewy? You start looking at any part of this business, skate where the puck, move where the puck is going to be. And what you'll find is the upside of those things. It's always the case in this business, whether it's buyers or sellers and where you spend your time. But just make sure that you have a solid balance to your business, but pay attention to where the market also is. Just in wrapping up here, just remember that if there's give or take more than 3 months supply of homes, you've moved into a buyer's market. So there may be more emphasis today on buyers than there may be on some of the listings. And yet the fact is that listings have to be out there, because if that's what people are buying, then that means they're buying listings. So someone's listing the homes, right? Someone. And sometimes we want to move away from listings because the listings require more rejection. They require more leadership. They require more, and oftentimes in today's marketplace, much more intense conversations of reductions of price and what was the feedback and what did people say. Whereas as a buyer, not that you don't have to lead, but there is not as much leadership skill in buying. And people can argue this all day long with me. And they're like, oh, no, I didn't say you don't need leadership in the buying process. I just know you don't need as much skill set to work with a buyer as you do with a listing. So just remember that even while you're working all these buyers, take the time to master the game of listings. Because if you do, and you do both, then your life will even be better in this business long term.
The thing I've always loved is that as a buyer's, as a listing agent, I'm an employer.
Yeah.
Because a buyer can't buy anything if it's not listed. And so I've now employed every agent on the Wasatch Front to find a buyer. We're on the buyer side, and the more skill set you have, the less it feels this way. But you can definitely tell you're an employee.
Yeah.
Because your client dictates how a lot of times, I mean, you got some control, but how many homes you gonna go see, what price.
Yeah, you don't have as much control, no question.
Yeah. And so you're definitely an employee, whereas a listing agent, you're an employer. And it comes down a lot more to coaching on the listing price.
Yeah, more leadership. Yeah. All right. Good. Zach, you good?
Great, hey here.
Good to be here. You're here.
Better late than never.
Yeah, you're here, man.